Hello and welcome to the next webinar in our series of the Glenn Jones Group and Coldwell Banker Access Realty. Today we have a very special guest with us that we're excited about. We have our managing broker and co-owner of our company, Mr. Tom Wywoody, who is also a member of the Metropolitan Planning Commission of the Savannah area. So we're going to talk to him today about responsible growth in our community and how they go about making decisions and things like that that'll affect real estate. So it should be an interesting topic. We also have with us Glenn Jones and Chris Estridge, managing partners of our group. So good morning, everyone, and welcome.
Good morning.
Joining us today. So let's get started. So Tom, how would you describe the state of the Savannah Metro in terms of growth in our area? We see some obvious things, road expansion and things like that out there. But from your perspective, and how do you determine the growth of our area is doing?
It's a great question. So, they just don't make any more land, right? And we can't develop any further east. So that presents a problem. The other thing about our community is it's defined by the waters that surround us, the marshes, the rivers, things like that. And so that presents a lot of problems with growth. In the Savannah City area, the actual area, defined by the borders of the city, there's not a lot of land left. What you have left really is, what we would call opportunities for infill development. Those leftover parcels of land that nobody has really had an opportunity to develop or desire to develop. And now they are coming back and relooking at a lot of these parcels of land and developing those. So that is happening in Savannah. And there is a revitalization of a lot of the buildings in the downtown area as a result of the lack of land to develop. Going out west towards Pooler, of course, we all know the story of Pooler and how it's grown. And I was having a conversation yesterday about Pooler. Pooler has a lot of great things going on. Their soils aren't very good, and they have had a lot of growth over the last couple of decade. And Pooler has struggled with that growth because there has been a lack of water because the main water trunk was going under I-95, and you can't turn off I-95 to build in a water trunk. Also, there wasn't any real health care out there other than urgent centers. And those things changed actually in the last year with St. Joseph's Candler opening up a fairly large outpatient treatment center on Pooler Parkway, which gives the whole Pooler opportunity a different look for a lot of people. Previously, if you had a chronic disease, COPD, brittle diabetes, heart problems, things like that, you were a 25-minute ambulance ride to the nearest hospital. So a lot of people could not really buy there. Once they bought there, they realized that, and they had to move. But Pooler, it's running out of land too, so now they're pushing out into Bloomingdale. So Bloomingdale is now the next place to go as far as growth, and so it just keeps expanding further out. Of course, we have the port's growth, and there's a land grab for warehousing space. So there's a lot of things going on with the growth in the area, and the Metropolitan Planning Commission tries to be proactive with this, but sometimes the growth gets ahead of you, and you can plan and plan and plan, but then all of a sudden things change, and I would give an example of Bluffton, South Carolina, in the early 2000s, late 90s, was just a sleepy town, a state of mind, not much going on. And then it exploded to be one of the second or third largest and fastest growing areas in the country in the 2000 to 2005. And there was just no way to keep up with the growth. So we tried to learn from that, and we tried to plan for unexpected growth as best as we can, but economic driving factors change things. The Planning Commission's role is to plan for growth, and to look, try and pre-think where roads will be needed and where commercial corridors will need to be, and where existing corridors can be turned into commercial, and where we want to preserve the residential area. And so that's kind of how we apply our actions to growth. It's always with the future in mind. And I think Savannah has a lot of unique characteristics, being one of the largest historic districts in the country, and it's difficult to control growth while keeping an eye on the preservation of the history. So it's a very unique area for growth and how to control it and to do it responsibly.
Right. Yeah, so your role as the MP, do you work with the local municipalities as far as approval?
Yeah, that's a lot of confusion in the community as to what the role of the MPC is. So the full name is the Savannah Chatham Metropolitan Planning Commission. So back in the mid '60s, there was a belief that the planning of Chatham County and in Savannah in particular should be combined. So the Metropolitan Planning Commission was created, and it's now evolved into 7 appointees by the Chatham County Commission to serve on it for 3-year terms. And then the Savannah City, appoints 7 board members to serve on it, representing the city's interest. And then, of course, the Chatham County manager and the Savannah City manager sit on it as well, and they are voting members. And the Planning Commission essentially works like this. We are the front door to development in the area. So if a developer wants to develop something, the first thing they want to do is come knock on the door of Metropolitan Planning Commission. And if you've got a project, planners will take a look at it. And if it's in the city, then it goes under the city zoning ordinances. If it's in the county, it goes under the county ordinances. And the staff will look at it, make recommendations. And if it's a small subdivision, they can approve it. If it's a large one, then it goes to the board for formal hearing. Now, if it's in the city, the board will hear the petitioner and the constituents state their case of why it should not be approved. And then the whole board, all representatives, will vote approval or disapproval or modify the request. Once that is done, the request or the action taken by the MPC is then handed off to, in this case, the city council, because it's a city project within the borders. And then they take our recommendation, and the city then hears the presentation, same thing from the constituents and from the petitioner. And then the city council votes up or down to approve it. Our role is a recommending body. That's what we do. We recommend either denial or approval of the petition. And that is it. That is a recommendation only. We are not the last line. If you do not get the outcome you want, then you go with our recommendation. You go to the city council, in this case, or if it's in the county commission, and state your case there. And then the county votes it up or down, and they enact it into law. So that is our role. And a lot of people think we have power. We are not a powerful group of people. We are all volunteer. Now with the committee, the Metropolitan Commission has a staff that is paid, and they are the experts in planning. They are very, very smart people. And that staff does all of the homework and then presents their findings to the board where we vote on it. Think of it this way. A bank is run by a CEO and its vice presidents, but they answer to a board of directors. Same thing with the MPC. The MPC is run by the staff, the experts, and they answer to the board of directors. We approve it or disapprove of it. So it's all public. It follows the public meeting rules, and everything is presented to everyone in the public. Nothing can be done in silence.
That's a great insight into that, because I for one, didn't know how that worked. I know Clint and Chris could probably say the same thing, that, we don't know how that works. What I always question, like long-term growth. Are we looking at the next 10 years, how things are going to affect 15, 20, 50, 100 years?
They go out as far as 50 years, and that's another underutilized resource of the MPC. So the MPC is kind of like an umbrella board of directors, and under the MPC, and I don't want to say under in that sense, but if you will, in the umbrella of the domain or purview of the MPC, there are many different functions. For instance, SAGIS.org, the GIS system, that is something that is the responsibility of the MPC. So the MPC funds the staff that maintains SAGIS. The transportation has a component where in the MPC, Historic Review Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, all of that falls in the, if you will, the umbrella of the MPC. And that being said, there's a lot of things that we do. Now, as a result of that, all of these different expertise, boards look to the future and say, okay, let's think about Hampstead. Think of New Hampstead, okay? So New Hampstead had a school built. Now, there are many, many parcels. I think there's enough parcels to put 8,000 homes out in New Hampstead. And that is the area out 204 past I-95 that goes up to I-16. Of course, that was all approved in 2000, 2005, 2006. And then, of course, everything changed in 2007 and 8. And that didn't really develop. Well, now it's starting to develop because there's just not a lot of land left here. And all of that was looked at 20 years ago. And everybody will wonder, why is it that this developer is buying a piece of land in the middle of nowhere right now? And what they do is they go to the MPC website and they can look at the 20 and 40 and 50-year plans of where roads will go, where schools will go, where commercial centers will be, and they'll buy up the land where that will be in 20 years. And then, of course, 20 years from now, they are at the middle of Main and Main, and they put a gas station, commercial, things like that. So all of that is on the website. You can look at the future plan of Savannah and Chatham County to look for expected growth, because with that 8,000 or so, I can't remember the actual number of home sites that could be out there, but with all of those home sites, there has to be water and sewer planned for, and the capacity for that water and sewer. There has to be fire and police, and there has to be school zones and schools, and there has to be Jiffy Lubes, and there has to be Walmarts and grocery stores, and all those things to support a community of 8,000 people. So that was all thought of in 2000, and now it's starting to happen according to that plan. So you can look on MPC, the MPC website, and see all of those plans. SAGIS actually has a lot of different layers on it, where if you're a technical person, you can look at SAGIS and change the layers and look at the growth, the planned growth for commercial corridors, the evacuation routes, the school districts, the aldermanic districts, the commissioner districts, everything is on SAGIS, and it's all maintained for the purpose of planning.
That's some great information, and we'll be sure when we post this video, we'll include those addresses on here they can visit and get familiar with. Realtors, we use SAGIS quite a bit for a lot of our daily function as a realtor. So, Chris, when we get into this and you talk about it, when you're showing clients houses, particularly like in, say, West Chatham, Bloomingdale Pool, like Tom talked about, do you get questions from clients about these sort of things? Like, what's coming on, what's going on here? I know they're building the Jimmy DeLoach Parkway is being extended all the way to 16. And so you can really see that construction going on now. So what kind of questions do you see out there?
Yeah, some people do. It really depends on what their purpose is for moving and why they're looking at that area. If it's the schools and the school's already there, then they're good. If they're maybe retiring and going to be there long term, they might ask questions like that. It just depends. It varies from client to client and their needs and what they're looking for.
Great. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to know that they do that. So, Tom, I know probably no more than probably more than any other industry in our area, the port probably has a lot to do with driving that. I know it's a huge employer and it's a huge. You kind of talk about some of the effects the port has on the Savannah area.
Yeah, so the ports cannot be understated. If you look, go to the Georgia Ports Authority and look at their future plan, they are doing an enormous amount of development on that port. And we are becoming one of the most logistical preferred areas in the country for anything. We've got roll on, roll off in Brunswick. We've got bulk in Brunswick. We've got containers in Savannah. We've got rail. We've got all these different things. So we're kind of the nexus of logistics for the ports. That's one of the reasons why it's so good. Plus the government really supports the port. The port could not do what they want without governmental support. But right now the port is moving. Here's a perfect example. If anybody's driven through Garden City at 11 o'clock at night on any given night, you end up sitting in Garden City for hours because of trains, because they switch. They have to pull off, they have to switch, they have to back in. It goes from 11 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning. Trains are blaring, the whole bit. All of that is being pushed onto the ports. They're doing about $150 million rail project so that they can do all of their train building on the port grounds itself. And the only time that you will actually be affected by that, if you're a Garden City resident, is when the train comes in or when the train leaves. That is all going on right now. They've created a couple of gates. And if you look at it, there is almost a super highway around Savannah that feeds the port. And that's what Jimmy DeLoach was originally created for, as a super highway, if you will, from the ports out to I-16. And all of that has been planned for, but right now, one of the big problems with the ports is warehousing. Warehousing is an interesting thing. There is a concept called drayage. And drayage is the cost or the process of moving a container from the port to a warehouse locally, okay? And there are trucking companies that's all they do. They go to the ports, they grab a container, they take it out to the warehouse, and they might grab a container from the warehouse and bring it back to the ports. And that's all they do all day long. They might actually be there 10, 12 times a day hitting those gates. So if you think about the cost of doing that goes down the closer you get to the ports. So, and these numbers I can't quote. I'm going to give you as an example. So if it costs $100 to take a container off the ports into a warehouse that is located right outside the ports in Garden City, that's great. That's a great thing. However, there's no more land left in Garden City, so you have to go out. Now they're developing warehouses along Jimmy DeLoach. That was what Jimmy DeLoach was created for. And so that land is now developing into warehouses, but that drayage is further. So the further the land is, the higher the cost. So now there's no more land along Jimmy DeLoach, so now they're going out to Bryan County. Now if they have to go 30-minute one way to and from, the cost gets higher for the drayage. Well, as the drayage cost goes up, the land value goes down. So a lot of warehousing is occurring out in Bryan County because you can get relatively inexpensive land for a warehouse, but your drayage cost is high. So there's some land in the area. It's a rare thing, and right now we are having a special called meeting today. It's on the bulk halter track, and if you're familiar with Veterans Parkway, if you go out Lines Parkway, you get on Veterans Parkway going south, you'll go under the overpass for Chatham Parkway, and then eventually you will go out into a marsh, if you will. And if you look to your right, once you're in that marsh area, just as you get into that marsh area, what you think is marsh area, if you look to your right, there is about an 1,800 acre tract of land that is wooded. As a matter of fact, my son has hunted on that since he was a kid. And it is an enormous, beautiful piece of land. And right now, it's been owned by a conglomeration of people, and they have decided to sell that land into 9 separate tracts all for warehousing. So this warehousing space will be very close to the ports. And so that's a very prized opportunity to buy those tracts there. And we are having a conversation today, or a board meeting today, about that Buckhalter tract. Anybody can go to those meetings. Anybody can see the plats. Anybody can see the renderings. Anybody can see any information related to this on the MPC website. You can actually pull up the agenda, and with the agenda are live links to the plats, live links to every conversation about what's going on. It's all done in the public. However, the public is not aware of these things many times. And so they find out after the decision has been made, thinking that, hey, I never got a chance.
Right.
And the decision is made, but they have always had a chance because it's posted, but people don't really, so much information on the internet, nobody actually goes to where the information is.
I think sometimes there's almost too much information on the internet. You don't know how to decipher some of it. That's why we were doing this webinar series at our group, is to kind of bring some, shed some light on some of these things that are out there. And, luckily we have a great resource in you to do that. Obviously we talk about housing as realtors. We all focus on residential real estate. And these industries are coming to town. When you're planning for these commercial sites or things, is it always factored in, hey, we're going to do, real estate, there'll be homes here, or single family homes, or multifamily homes, or
yes,
how do you factor that in?
It's a great question. And I would go to the New Hampstead site back on 204. They built New Hampstead School, and a lot of people, when they built that, they thought, now why are they building a school out here of all places? Well, that's because that was part of the plan, to provide a school for the eventual community that would develop around it. And that community has multifamily tracts, it has single family tracts, it has all of those things. Right now that's out where Nine Line Apparel is. Nine Line Apparel right now is in a forest, but 20 years from now it's going to be downtown Main Street. So there's that plan is certainly considered. And if you look in, however, commercial is people don't want it in their backyard. If that, NIMBY, not in my backyard. And let me give you a perfect example. If you go on Skidaway, if you know where the city dump is, there is a park right next to it, and there's Bonabella, and there's an old strip mall there that's been there for everywhere. And then there is an old, I don't know exactly what the building used to be, but it's now called Cohen's Retreat. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
So Cohen's Retreat is now a restaurant. It's actually an event venue. The signage, it's actually got a piece of the Blarney Stone there where you can go kiss the Blarney Stone. And, but that has been created all within the last 5 years to be an event venue. Well, when they created that, there was no plan to have an event venue there with a restaurant and all that other stuff. But if you look at the growth patterns along Skidaway Island, you have a lot of houses that go, I believe it's north down Skidaway, towards Victory. If you pass that Cohen's Retreat and Bonabella corner, you'll see residences on either side. Mm-hmm. And if you look on the future planning map, right now it's zoned residential, but it actually says that one day in the future that will all turn commercial. And so there are a lot of people that are looking that area as far as let me put a daycare or some kind of low intensity commercial there. And they will go in and zone, petition to rezone it commercial. And because the plan is to have at one day that will be commercial, a commercial corridor, they will have a much easier time of getting a positive answer on making getting their zoning to commercial, because that's part of the plan. Although it's not that way now, the plan is that it will be there sometime.
Great. So one thing that I always have a pet peeve about is, we're obviously in weird times, and we have been with the internet growth business and online retailers. A lot of traditional brick and mortar retailers have closed, and I know we've got, some more closing here now that have announced they're closing soon. And there's a lot of empty retail space, particularly at Abercorn and Southside. Do y'all ever factor in, is there any kind of incentivized to get people to use some of this space instead of building new or going to a different place to keep from having all these vacant?
That's a great question. This all centers around, and this is where it comes back to us as realtors. Our role as a realtor is, we advocate private property rights.
Absolutely.
Okay? And if you want to build, if you have a piece of land that's zoned commercial, let's say it's not for an industrial Caterpillar repair station, but you can put a restaurant there, you can put a strip mall or something like that. And you have land like that is zoned, and you can do that. It's your right to do it. And economics will drive its success or failure, but it is your right to do it. Let me take you back to Buckhalter. Buckhalter tract out there, not a lot of people want to see that happen because it's a beautiful piece of land. You can put 4,000 or 5,000 houses out there in an area where we don't have a lot of land left. People wonder, well, why do you put warehouses there? Well, it's not our duty to question why. The owners of that property, it's zoned, and they have a right to do that. And if we as a board would vote no on their ability to do that, we are essentially denying them their constitutional rights of use and control of their land. So back to your question, would it be better? Well, you know what, we'd like to see that, but it's not our choice. If you own the property, you get to do what you want with it, so long as it's within the zoning ordinances. And our position is not to question why. Our position is to say, okay, if you want to do this and you want to request a variance, is that variance appropriate for the area? Yes or no? That's our role. So.
Great. And one of the questions I have too, kind of changing gears here a little bit, is, and we talked about this, and I don't know if we have Glenn in here. Glenn can kind of chime in on this. I visited Charleston recently, and I noticed, Charleston's similar to Savannah as far as the historic area and the things. I know Charleston's a lot bigger city than Savannah, but they seem to have a large amount of like high-rise, what I would term high-rise condominiums and apartments and things like that near the river, with taking advantage of the views and things like that. Savannah really lacks that, in my opinion, compared to Charleston. And, obviously we have a housing need in Savannah. Our housing market's very hot. And why do we seem to get more hotels here than we do condominiums and things like that? What drives that? Is it financial?
That's a great question. And actually there has been some changes recently to address that. So, the downtown is a webinar in itself, so I don't want to go too far into that. But I look at it, and many of us look at the downtown historic area as the goose that lays the golden egg, and we don't want to kill that. One of the reasons why the downtown area is so popular is because it still has a residential character. And so the downtown area is very, obviously preservation, the Historic Review Board has done an incredible job of preserving the residential character of downtown, and that's something that attracts people here. So about 3 years ago, there was a study, and there was about 3,000 hotel rooms. And of course, one of the reasons why there's 3,000 hotel rooms, is because there hasn't been a lot of hotel development. Well, what that did was that pushed all of the economics of the situation. Said, well, if there aren't any hotel rooms, then there should be Airbnbs. So there's a proliferation of Airbnbs in the downtown area. And that was a big controversy. I don't know if you remember that back then. And they actually decided that each ward, Savannah downtown area is divided by wards, has a maximum number of residential units that can be Airbnb, and now it's 20%. So if you are in an area that's saturated with it, you got to get on a waiting list to convert it to Airbnb. And so what that did was that stifled the growth of Airbnb. And as a result of that, we did a study in the MPC and said, okay, under the current development requirements, who would build a condo development down here? And you have to understand, one of the reasons why they don't build high rises is because of the character of downtown. They don't want 20-story buildings. They want a maximum height of 4 stories, and that's it. You get a bonus story for 5. If you put commercial on the bottom, you get a bonus story, so up to 5. But that being said, they did the study on a piece of property actually across from the Civic Center and said, why would a developer build condos here versus why would they put a small hotel, a boutique hotel? And they found that if you were to build a condo that anybody would want to buy, they would have to spend $1.5 million on the condo for the developer to get their return on investment. So what that said was the developer, anybody that wants to buy that piece of property in order to get a return on their investment would be put a small 50-room boutique hotel, the income producing property, and that's what you got. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of small boutique hotels developed within the historic district. But because you can't have anything bigger than 65 rooms, I believe it is, that pushed all of the larger hotels out to the edge. So now the fear is we end up with almost like a Central Park in New York, where we have a historic district that is rimmed by high-rise hotels, which that created its own problem. But you can't understate the economics. Right now, the economics say because there's a limited hotel room capacity, Airbnb is popular. Well, now, I think by the time Plant Riverside is done and Savannah River Landing is done, actually within the next 6 months, I believe, there will be an additional 2,500 hotel rooms. So 3 years ago, we had 3,000 hotel rooms. Now we have 5,500-ish. And don't quote me on these numbers. These numbers are guesstimates, but they're fairly close. So if you've got 5,500 hotel rooms now, with 3,000, you're running 96% capacity at all times. They can charge $400 a night for a hotel room. Now you got 5,500 hotel rooms and you drop down to 88, 90% capacity. Now your prices have to come down. Now they can stay in a hotel room. So that means that people will leave the Airbnb. And so now the economics are starting to change. We are in a situation where the economics are driving development downtown. And those, as you know, economics, those will change. As we wax and wane through our markets, those economics change. And we may have a whole different view of the downtown Airbnb market, hotel market, and all the things that go on with that in 2 years if the economy changes significantly. That being said, last point on that, it was very difficult to develop condos in the downtown market, very difficult because of the requirements for parking, minimum square footage. So that was all changed in about 2 years ago, where instead of having minimum parking requirements, they have and minimum floor, minimum square footage per unit. They've changed it to make development of condos or redevelopment of older buildings into condos much more attractive to builders and developers. Couple that with the opportunity zone of the Montgomery Street, Martin Luther King corridor, and you have a whole different situation of development choices that exist today that didn't exist 2 years ago. And I think you're going to see a lot of that growth going in that direction as you described.
That's great because, I think the historic district is so unique and beautiful. A lot more people would like to be able to live down there, but they're, the prices are so high on single family homes.
Of course, Plant Riverside is its own zoning district now, with the Kessler Hotel. And I think it's 30 retail establishments with restaurants, and that those retail establishments are included.
Those don't know, that's the redevelopment of the old power plant, the old power plant at the River Street. So is what Tom's talking about there.
If you go to the opposite side, because that Plant Riverside is in the historic district. If you go to the opposite side, so the Eastern Wharf, just on the other side of the Marriott downtown. That, if you go into look at that, that's going to be almost a small city. That entire area has its own zoning requirements. They can build up to, I think, 140-foot buildings. You'll see one of those taller ones now. They've done a tremendous job of development, and they plan on putting in $500 million in investment into that market, and will be mixed use, retail, restaurants, townhomes, single family, condos, apartments, parking. There's a plan for a grocery store down there, and that is moving along, and that's very healthy there. And they've done it in the motif of the historic district, so you will feel like you are walking from the historic district. Yes, it'll be new, but it'll be very historic and feel that way. With the zero setbacks from, the meaning is zero setback. The building goes up to the sidewalk, and squares, U's, things like that.
That's great. We are planning in the future to invite you back, Tom, to do a entire webinar on Airbnbs and our situation. That's
Yeah.
So, Glenn, we had some technical difficulties with you earlier. Did you have a point that you wanted to make about where we are with the MPC before we wrap things up here?
Well, it plays an important part in Savannah. I mean, MPC, like Tom said, it's not a end-all solution to everything, but they're there for the citizens of Savannah. They're there for the growth of Savannah and for the well-being of Savannah. And they're overseeing a lot. And it's just, I mean, when you get to Savannah, the ports and tourism drive Savannah.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Savannah run. I mean, with the tourism, you've got the downtown historic, and you've got Tybee, and they're put in place there to make sure that Savannah will compete with other markets like Charleston, so to speak. They're there to make sure that as we move forward, we're moving forward in the best interest of everyone in Savannah, for the economics and for the housing, for everything. So they're a very, very important board to be on. And I'm proud to say that my broker and owner of our realty company here sits on that board, Tom. We appreciate your time because, again, like you said, it is a non-paying job, and we appreciate the time to do that. And I know the hours you put in, and I also know the hours you put in here at the realty company, and we appreciate you serving on that board.
Well, thank you. Let me just give you a couple of resources real quick so you can add these. So the website for the MPC is https, you got to have the S there, it won't come up, www.thempc.org. In there you will see Zoning Board of Appeals, the MPC agendas. These agendas are live, so you can click on them. They're PDF, but they have live links where you pull plats and you can see what's planned. Then the SAGES is an underutilized resource. If you go to sages.org, what I would say is go to sages.org and scroll down below the screen that you don't see when you get there. There are a lot of preset maps for you to look at. If you click on those, you don't have to learn how to do the layers. It'll bring up the school districts. It'll bring up everything. But those two things right there are underutilized. A lot of people don't know they exist. And all of the information I've discussed here is available on the MPC website, the agendas, all of the projects, the new zoning ordinance that was just passed. Everything is there. So, and of course, I'm a resource. If you ever have a question, you can always give me a call and send me an email, and I'll be happy to either answer it or put you in the direction of the person who can answer.
Well, thank you everyone for doing that, Tom. We certainly appreciate your time today and shedding some light on that. And Chris and Glenn, thank you for supporting this through our group. And, please be sure to check our social media sites. We have those on the screen for you now. Our website is homesofgreatersavannah.com. Check out our blog. We have a YouTube channel with an ever-growing amount of content on there, and that is also on the screen at this point, the address for all of our social media. And we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar coming soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. That was great.
Bye, guys.
Bye.